Hey there and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, but today I'm going to be bringing you a pretty interesting video, something I think is pretty valuable. We're going to be taking a look at lighting basics inside of Blender from a more cinematography point of view. I see a lot of videos out there from people and incredible projects, but the lighting sometimes is missing some key factors. So we're going to be taking a look at lighting in Blender as if it was a physical scene. I've worked in video production for longer than I've worked in Blender, so some of these are standard trade tips and tricks. So we're just gonna jump right in. So I have my character here, and right now we're just in texture preview mode. We're gonna jump over to Cycles viewport rendering, and as you can see right now in the world settings in the shader tab, I just have a white background, just providing ambient light 100% covering the character. Now for showing off certain models, certain environments, this actually might be the better way to go if you don't want your lighting influencing the presentation of what you're showing. But for a final product, especially if it's going to be narrative, this is definitely not going to cut it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is establish the environment that we're in. So in Blender here, you can just type in environment texture as long as you're in the world settings. I'm going to go ahead and plug that into color, and the whole world is going to turn pink because there's a missing texture. So if we hit open here on environment texture, we'll go to HDRIs, and this might be something that is pretty obvious for a lot of people, but we're just gonna start at the beginning and just work our way down. So I have a collection of HDRIs that I use here. HDRIs, for anyone who doesn't know, stands for high dynamic range images. They're designed to wrap around your scene 360 degrees to provide lighting information. So depending on what you want your scene to feel like, you're going to pick a different HDR. So just to start, just to kind of get a baseline here, I'm going to choose the Artist Workshop here, an interior scene. I'm going to hit open image. And as you can see, the environment is loaded in. This one, I like this one a lot because it has these nice big windows on the side, and then it has an interior space with a little bit more contrast. So I find that I kind of like this one as a starting point for scenes that are interior based, though there are tons of options out there. And for anyone who doesn't know, one of the best resources out there for finding HDRIs is polyhaven.com. They have an entire HDRI section here under assets, and every single one of these is free and royalty free. So they are perfect to use for any kind of project. And if you click here, you can see that they come in a wide variety of resolution options, all the way from 1 to 24K. Not all of them, I think, are in 24K. I think pretty much all of them are up to 16K. But an incredible resource. And since we're already here, if you're looking for textures, this is another great place for textures, or models to fill out your scene. This is a great place. So polyhaven.com, probably the best resource out there for these kinds of things. But now that we have the HDRI in the project, we have to establish where the camera is going to be set up. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new collection here. I'm going to rename this to camera. I'm going to drop in a new camera, and I'm going to hit 0 so that I can see through the camera. Now, if you go to the view settings here in the sidebar, you could click this little option here called camera to view. And now when you move your view in the viewport, you're going to go ahead and position the camera along with where you're looking. There's a really easy way to move the camera around. If you have the incredible Blender add-on Photographer, there'll be a little button up here that will automatically toggle that on and off. They'll also give you some more realistic settings when it comes to lights and camera options. We're not going to cover that today. Maybe in a video down the line. I've disabled it for this video, but it is one of the best add-ons out there for camera settings. Okay, now that we have our camera generally where we want, we're going to talk about our first setting, and that is depth of field. Now, I said, yeah, this is a lighting tutorial, but this kind of thing goes hand in hand with the look of things. So I'm going to go ahead down here, and I'm going to turn on depth of field and select our character here as the focus object. And we get something that's fairly realistic. One of my biggest pet peeves when I see a Blender project, especially a Blender project that's pretty good, is sometimes they have unrealistic cameras, and that triggers something in my brain, and I think a lot of people's brains, that just immediately says fake. And one of those things here is when the f-stop setting is too low. Having a blurry background, having that bokeh, as cinematographers would call it, is a very, like, is a desirable thing. It's kind of what we associate with an expensive look, or at least a high quality look. But you could definitely go too far. Lenses are physical objects, obviously, so they can only let in a certain amount of light. So you're bound by the physics of how a camera works in the real world. Now, it's kind of lame to say, like, hey, you shouldn't break those physics for the sake of creating art, especially in a program like Blender where you can do whatever you want. But it's one of those things that, because it's not realistic, it's just going to make people question what they're looking at. I've gone ahead and Googled 50mm cinema lenses, and cinema lenses are measured in t-stops, and Blender uses f-stops, but they're close enough that you can just use those numbers and just pretend that's an f. If I click on something like this 50mm Sigma 1.5 lens, this is a lens that I've personally used before. It's a lens that is pretty common, and a 50mm 1.5 is something that you're gonna see out there. So I'm gonna go ahead and type in 1.5, and now we have something that's a little bit more realistic, something that I think won't trigger that part of somebody's brain and tells them that it's fake. Another thing we're doing, if you can't tell, is we're going off axis. So there's tons of places that you could put the camera, and we're not gonna go into how those rules work in this video, but this kind of 3/4 position here where you're on the side of somebody is a very classic camera position, and people have been using it literally for hundreds of years back in the portrait painting days. So we're just going to use this as a base, and we're just going to start here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button, camera to view, so I can move my view without affecting the camera. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the positioning of the HDRI. So one thing here is that we have the lighting on the same side of the camera. So what I mean by that is, if you take a look at our character, on her left side here, where the camera is positioned, is the same side that these windows are. That flattens the image. So a really easy way to get dimensionality in your projects is to make sure that the lighting is opposite of where the camera is, if it in relation to where the center line of your focus is of your subject. So I'm going to go into the world settings here in the shader editor. I'm going to click on our HDRI, and I'm going to hit Control T. Now, to make sure that in preferences here, Node Wrangler is selected. If Node Wrangler is selected, then when you hit Control T on an image texture, that will bring up a mapping node so that we can change its position. So I'm going to go ahead here and use the Z rotation to swing the HDRI around and bring that lighting from those open windows to the opposite side of our character. And immediately you can see what happens here. That creates a lot more dimensionality. Now we got a little bit of light shining on the side of her face that's towards the camera, and the rest is kind of falling off nicely on the far side. And this is what's known as Rembrandt lighting. Rembrandt was a painter who was famous for his portraiture, and one of the lighting techniques that he developed is this kind of 3/4 lighting, where the light is opposite your perspective, or not opposite, but on the other side of your perspective as in relation to your subject, and the light shining on the other side of the face just gives us nice flattering look. Now, this character I made for a short film that is actually going through the festival circuit right now that I made. So the idea of the short film is that the entire world has been plagued by a pandemic of insomnia. So that's why she looks pretty haggard and tired, because that's it's kind of the point of the short film. So now that we have where the HDRI is, we're going to take a look at shaping light. So I'm going to go ahead and create another collection, and I'm going to rename this to Lights. And I'm going to make sure that my cursor is to the world origin, or at least close to our character here, so that when I bring in a new light, I'm going to start with an area light. It's close enough to them. I'm going to bring this up above them, and I'm going to make this quite big. I'm going to make this a big light. And what we're focusing on here is soft source lighting. That's the most kind of flattering image, generally speaking. There's a lot of There's a lot of rules that you can definitely break, but the idea is to learn the rules in the first place so you know when and how to break them. So we're just going to be doing some really basic lighting setups with soft source lighting. That's why I like this HDRI as well. This is a nice soft source of light, and it provides a very flattering look. So this top light here, I'm going to bring the power up so that I can see it a little bit clearer so we can see what it's doing. And because it's directly above our character, the first thing that it's doing is this flattening the image again. It's causing shadows under the eyes and the nose, and especially if we bring the spread down, you can kind of see where that light is falling. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad look, depending on your mood and the style of the shot. This might be exactly what you're looking for, an interrogation scene, for instance, or maybe like a harsh overhead hallway lighting and like a horror scene. This would work probably very well. But because we're kind of trying to show off this character a little bit more, something that's maybe a little bit more naturalistic, I'm going to bring this spread up again. And I'm going to move the light back on the y-axis. When we move it on the y-axis, we bring it away from our character behind them. And as you can see, it's just affecting their hair now. And the point of that is to separate them from the background. Right now it's a little harsh, so I'm going to bring the light a little bit further back, and then I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis towards our character. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. We don't need it to be that big. I'm going to turn the spread up all the way to 180%, and you can see again what it's doing. It's kind of separating our character from the background. And I'm going to bring the power down. And I'm just going to bring the power up just a little bit so that we can start to get this outline on the back side of our character. You can see the neck and the hair here. And it's bleeding over into the shoulders a little bit. So what that is doing is that's separating our character. Another similar thing you can do is add a hair light. This is kind of acting as a hair light, but generally speaking, a hair light would be a smaller source light, again, placed above the character. I'm just going to go ahead and swing this out on the X rotation, and then I'm going to bring it a little bit more directionally where the camera is facing, and then I'm going to swing the light in like this so that it's facing our character. And if we bring that strength up, I'm going to go ahead and turn off that overhead light. You can see that is, I'm going to bring the spread down as well. And as you can see here, what it's doing is it's pretty much only affecting. I'm going to bring the light a little bit closer, and you can kind of see what it's doing when I bring it closer. It's just kind of providing like a halo almost around the hair. It's spilling down onto the shoulders a lot, so we can fix that by rotating the light up a little bit. I probably do want to increase the spread as well, but you can kind of see what that light is doing, where it's kind of adding a rim light all the way around the character. This is traditionally what's known as a hair light. And this is a really good way to separate your character out as well. This is a very, very beloved technique, especially in interviews. Like you'll see this in documentaries all the time. And once you notice, you'll never be able to unsee it. I'm going to swing this around a little bit so it's kind of facing us a little bit more. And this is also where you could add a pop of color. So if I change the color here, you can see it doesn't affect the face because there's no light falling on the face. It's affecting everything else. So it's kind of causing that nice separation here. But because it's not affecting the main features, we can change the color to whatever we want. So if this was you could motivate this in your scene by having maybe like an exit sign behind them, or you have it a little bit bluer, and maybe that's like a sunroof or like the color of the moon. If this was a shot at night, I'm going to bring the background strength all the way down so you can kind of see what this is doing. It's just kind of adding that nice kind of rim. So this actually shows another thing that to keep in mind when you're working in Blender and 3D that you don't have to think about in the real world, and that's the way that your modifiers affect lights. So this character here, for simplicity's sake, has masks affecting where geometry is actually being rendered. So, and because of that, and because there's a fabric texture on this character, the cloth of her shirt has some subsurface scattering and transmission values. So that shirt, if I turn on solidify, you can see that kind of fixes that problem. Still provides a little bit of light bleeding here on the shoulder, which is good. That's what you want. So you can see the overhead light that we added earlier is providing a little bit of fill on the side of the camera we're on. But again, not lighting the face. I'm going to add another light here, and this is going to be an area light again. I like area lights because you can affect the spread really easily, and it's really easy to play around with. I'm going to rotate again on the x-axis, and I'm going to bring this light kind of at a 45-degree angle from where she is in relation to where our camera is, and I'm going to bring the rotation back towards her. And we're going to use this light to kind of simulate where that open window light was in the HDRI. If I bring the spread down, you can kind of start to see this triangle appear on her face. That's very indicative of Rembrandt lighting. If I bring this light over more on the y-axis, but if I just slide it this way, and I start to move that rotation again, you can see that triangle becomes very apparent. I'm going to move if I move the light up a bit and bring it down, you can start to see that shape and that dimensionality is really being exaggerated. So I'm going to go ahead and actually bring this light a little bit further this way and swing it back around. I think right there is pretty good. And we're going to bring the spread back in to that light to kind of soften that source. And maybe I'll stick around 64-ish. You can kind of see we have that nice fall off on the skin, and then we got a little bit of light going to the far side that's providing that shape. And if we bring our HDRI back on, you can see that that light is essentially doing the same thing that the windows are doing, but providing a little bit more of an exaggerated effect. So even if you have an HDRI in the scene, it is usually a pretty good idea to have supplementary lights to enhance the look. That's what cinematographers do a lot of the time. They get into a scene, they get into a set, into an environment, and the first thing that they do is they add lighting to accentuate the lighting characteristics that are already there. So now we're going to take a look at negative fill. So I'm going to create another collection here, and I'm going to call this neg fill, just like that. And I'm going to create a mesh plane, and I'm going to go into the object settings. I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to name it flag. And I'm just going to make that a black material with a roughness setting of 1. Now, what these are on an actual set is they're used to block light. So if I rotate this on the x-axis and the z-axis, I can position this nearish the camera to stop the light from the HDRI on this side from bleeding too much into the shot. So to turn this on and off, you can see the extra contrast that this is added. If you want a really exaggerated effect, of course, you can make this a lot bigger, and that's going to block more light. You could go into edit mode, and you could swing out the top here and bring that in, and you could block even more of that light, top and bottom. Be careful not to put it below the lighting that you have. This is a technique that is commonplace on actual sets that I very rarely see in the digital world. It's a technique that I've been using for a long time when I was working in video production, and it's a technique that I've been using since working in 3D. So generally what I do, because I like to kind of constrain myself to the actual techniques of actual cinematography, is I'll create one plane, and if I want to have negative fill elsewhere, I'll simply just make another one. So if I want to block a little bit of that light that is kind of bleeding onto her hair a little bit, we'll see if this is even doing anything. Yeah, a little bit. But you can kind of see how we're shaping the light even more. So we're controlling where it's going. So another really common technique in the real world is bounce lighting. Bounce lighting is similar to negative lighting. I'm going to go ahead and shift duplicate this guy here, and I'm just going to zero it out. I'm going to bring it up a little bit on the x-axis, bring it up here, and I'm going to create a new material and just call it bounce. And I'm going to make this white. So what bounce lighting does is it provides secondary lighting up into the subject by bouncing the light. It's basically what it sounds like. Now there's a problem. In Blender, those rays of light that are bouncing off of our bounce card here and bouncing up into our subject are creating a little bit more noise than if this was just an actual light. So in a lot of cases, it might actually just be easier to create a light and put it in the same position that you would put a bounce. And then just adjusting it as needed. So you can see here we're bringing a little bit more of that detail in on that shadow side. I'm going to go ahead and turn the background off again so you can kind of see the difference here. And again, this is a tried and true method that is extremely common. But a really easy way to add unnecessary noise and render time into your image if you're not careful. So I generally just use an extra light to simulate it. I'm going to change this from blue. I think I find it just a little bit distracting. I might bring it up a little bit. Maybe I'll even set the color temperature to something like 3200. It's probably important to learn what color temperature is. It's not something we're going to go into in this video, but the idea of color temperature is it's how warm or cool a light is. So the lower the number, the warmer the light is, and the higher the number, the cooler the light is. So if I set this to 5600 degrees, that's like a daylight balance. That's kind of what the sun feels like outside. So old school tungsten incandescent lights were set to 3200, so they kind of have that warm look to them. And then you could go even lower, kind of get that old school street lamp look, which I really like. So I think I'm actually going to set this to 3200, just an old school tungsten light source. So a good way to get balance there when you've added a light of a warmer color is take another light. In this case, I'm going to use this kind of backfill here. And I'm going to warm this up a little bit, or I'm going to cool this down a little bit. So maybe I'll go to even something like 7,000. We can take a look at that here. So 3,200 would look like this. 7,000 looks like this. It's a nice cool light. It's a little bit whiter. So when we bring those lights back in, you can see here, we have a nice contrast. So we've got a pretty good lighting setup here. It feels pretty naturalistic. We have a little bit of interest with the different color temperatures. But there's one thing that I want to add, and that is an eye light. So I'm going to shift right click on the tip of her nose here and add a point light. I'm going to bring this back a little bit, just to right there for now. Now we already have an eye light in the scene. If we turn this off, you can actually see that light that is lighting the far side of her face here reflected in her eye. But the point of an eye light is to provide a little bit more of a specular, sharp light in the eye and just provides a little bit of detail. So again, this is something that you don't necessarily need. There's lots of examples online where eye lights aren't used, but it's a little bit more of a classic technique. It's something that has been around for a while, so might as well throw it in. So the easiest way that I found to make sure that your eye light is actually in the eye is to open up another 3D viewport on the same window. I'm going to zoom all the way in here. I'm going to just choose her eye as the render area, and I'm going to turn on cycles on this smaller window. And then on my main window here, I'm going to turn this back to viewport shading. So I'm going to go ahead and select that point light, and I'm going to increase its radius quite a bit. Increasing its radius also makes it a little bit softer. So I'm going to increase the power here so that we can see it a little bit better. I'll probably just bring it up to an even 100 for now. And I'm going to just go into top view here. And I'm just going to move this back maybe over here. You can see it here just underneath our main light. We're going to zoom out and open this up so that we can see if this point light is affecting it's not affecting our light setup. Perfect. But as you can see, it's still in there. And then from here, you can adjust how much you want to see of it. I'm going to bring the radius up a little bit, maybe like 1.4 meters. Zoom out a little bit. And it's not affecting our light setup, but it's adding a little bit more of that detail into the eyes, which I really like. So there you go, a really simple lighting setup for Blender using classic techniques from the cinematography world. Again, these are not techniques that will work in every situation, but for like naturalistic lighting, showing off your models or setting up something for a more classic styled scene, this will definitely work, and then can be adapted. All of these lights obviously are adjustable in any number of ways. And we haven't even talked about things like gobos, or how your character is posed in a scene, or the environment and like set dressing and those kind of things, and how that affects your image as well. This is purely about lighting a human subject, and I think these are techniques that will be very helpful to a lot of people. There's gonna be another video coming out pretty soon about some more lighting techniques in Blender. Just trying to compile some cool things and make sure that I have all the sources figured out so I can thank the right people, because there's some pretty cool stuff out there. But until then, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.